So hi everyone. We heard a lot about quantum computing, but what we actually care about is Bitcoin, and is somebody going to steal it, as we heard earlier. So my presentation is based on a report we wrote together with Anthony that just tries to put a baseline on quantum computing, its relation to Bitcoin, and pretty much where we are. Cool. Okay. So we're going to talk about signatures, we're going to talk about mining, we're going to talk about the threat model for Bitcoin, and timelines for solutions. Cool. So when we're thinking about quantum computing and Bitcoin, there are two topics that come to mind. First of all, mining. What if we have a quantum computer that will run probably right now Grover's algorithm efficiently and is able to compete with ASICs? And when we're thinking about mining, we're thinking about a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, CRQC. You will hear this pretty much throughout this day and the next one. And we're thinking about the quantum computer breaking cryptographic assumptions in the context of Bitcoin, elliptic curve cryptography. We already saw these three letters meaning something else, but I'm sure you can get it from context. Cool. So mining. We all know in mining, we're trying to find a nonce to hash below a given target. When we're thinking about classical mining, what we have right now, the way that this works, we have more attempts, the higher the probability we find this nonce. So we can think about a box. We push the button, we look inside, did it work? No. We push again, did it work? Did it work? No, until it does. It grows linearly, and you can do this in parallel. So Alice and Bob can have their two boxes, click on them, look, click, look, click, look. They can also do this together. It doesn't matter. When we're thinking about quantum mining, the box looks very different. We click, 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 and with each click, the probability of when we look inside, do we see the solution, goes up. So we click at it, it goes like 50, 55, 60. At some point, we get to a number we're comfortable with. We open the box and we see if we found the solution or not. There's like, the math was done, the optimization, how many clicks until we look inside, what's the best choice. But although it sounds like click and find solution, there is a deep difference coming from the different structures. So the good news for a quantum miner is that theoretically we have a very significant speed up. The not so good news, at least for us, is that you cannot do this in parallel. So if in classic computing, it doesn't matter if Alice and Bob have their separate boxes and they're clicking, in quantum computing, it is much more efficient for both of them to put their efforts together and use the same machine. So it's very difficult to do this in parallel. And if it makes you ask what's up with centralization, this is a very good question. So the good news about mining is that it's not happening anytime soon. The name of the game in mining are those clicks. It's the clock time. ASICs are very, very, very good. And quantum computers are not really a thing yet. But when they will be, still we can expect them to be significantly slower, much less stable. So not in the coming decades. This is not coming up. If it will come up one day, we should be worried about centralization, where we'll see more stale blocks when you do the game theory of your optimal strategy. And once you have stale blocks, you have problems with your security assumptions. So where we are right now with mining, lots of interesting theoretical questions, lots of things to think about. Do we have a different proof of work algorithm? But absolutely not something to lose sleep about, just because of the engineering being so difficult and ASICs being so good. Cool. So if you do want to lose sleep about something, let's talk about cryptography. We all know asymmetric cryptography. We have a public key that is, well, known to the public. And then we have a secret key, which is, well, secret. And with the secret key, we can use this for messaging, but another thing we can do with this kind of schemes is sign messages. So you can use your secret key to sign a message, and then everybody who sees the public key can check the signature. And we have some very, very basic cryptographic assumptions that a lot of things, including Bitcoin, are built upon. So calculating the public key from the secret key is easy. You come up with the secret key, you find it. Doing the opposite operation, and this is where the asymmetry comes from, calculating the secret key from the public key is infeasible, takes as long as the age of the universe, and so on. It is not a thing. And also, when we're talking about signatures, forging a signature, if you only have the public key, is also infeasible. Okay? Good. So this is the world we're living in, and this is what Bitcoin and so many other things are built upon. So let's say we have a CRQC. What will the CRQC break? Everything. It's a big problem. So there is a small caveat, but all in all, just from the definition of a cryptographically relevant quantum computer is that it breaks ECC and later on most of classical current cryptography. So what actually should or could happen is that calculating the secret key from the public key becomes easy instead of infeasible. And then Bob's your uncle. You can do whatever you want because you broke the very, very basic assumption of cryptography. And in Bitcoin specifically, you can forge a signature if you see the public key. If you have the public key, you get the secret key, and then you can do whatever you want. The one thing that gives us some grace in this context is that you need access to the public key. You do need to see it to do something with it. So here we are at Bitcoin. Okay, so again, you're sending a Bitcoin transaction, you need to sign with the secret key associated with the public key of the UTXO, and then they check it, so on. In some cases, for some addresses, the public key is present on chain. It's lying around there. Anybody with a handy CRQC can pick it up, derive the secret key, and go forward. In other cases, the public key is hashed. This means that they cannot, or a potential quantum attacker cannot start the process of deriving the secret key from the public key because it's hashed. And then when somebody wants to spend it, they do need to present the public key and the signature. And then to validate the transaction, you check the signature with the public key and you check that the public key hashes to whatever you see on chain. Cool. So we have that. And this is, all in all, the quantum problem when it comes to Bitcoin. Cool. So about this, so as we said, some signatures are immediately vulnerable. This is what we call the long-range attack. These are the signatures that either show the public key on chain or the public key was leaked for different reasons. So these are examples of the signatures, and in a later talk we'll see some numbers relating to how much funds and how much UTXOs are using these types of addresses. But then, as I said, you need access to the public key, and sometimes it doesn't come from the address type, it comes from address reuse. Do not reuse addresses. Thank you. If the excuse you need is quantum computing, sure, take it. But this is a very, very bad practice in general. And then, again, there are some numbers coming up. A lot of the public keys that are available to whoever wants to take them come from address reuse. Pretty much any other UTXO will become vulnerable upon spend. This means that whenever you're trying to spend this UTXO, as we said earlier, you present the public key, it's compared to the hash, and the signature is checked. And from that time, anybody with a CRQC can go ahead and try to derive the secret key. We call this short-range attack or upon spend attacks. And I'll take a second to talk, the timelines of these attacks are very, very different. In a long-range attack, you have pretty much all the time in the world until whoever the owner tries to spend it, succeeds, and so on. So in the long-range attack, you can have days, weeks, years, whatever. In a short-range attack, you have, let's assume it goes through the mempool. You have the time from the UTXO appearing in the mempool and revealing the public key to the UTXO going on the blockchain and maybe potentially a few blocks in. Okay, so the attacker can try to send a competing transaction. And if we're talking about very, very large sums, we can consider some reorg of the chain, a block or two, but still you're talking like hours, days, not all the time in the world you will see in a long-range attack. And this is also like very clearly triggered if somebody spends it. If your public key gets leaked in a different way, that's a different problem and can change the time estimation on the attack. Cool. So not all signatures will give us these problems. Not every signature scheme can be attacked by quantum computers. So we already know a few quantum secure schemes that were suggested. It's a very popular and deep research topic. The problem with most of the schemes is that something has to give. So it's usually either the efficiency, the functionality, in many cases, both. And in general, the reason we trust elliptic curve cryptography, RSA, whatever it is that a lot of very, very, very smart people tried to break it and they failed. And what happens with some of these quantum secure schemes is that they get published and then very, very smart people try to break them and then they break them, occasionally with a classical computer. So it's not like theoretically something will happen, no. So when we're thinking about cryptographic schemes, first of all, they need to offer efficiency, they need to offer capability, but they also need to mature. Like some people need to give some hits about it, we need to think about this, and then we can move forward. So honestly, when we're thinking about these kinds of schemes, the longer we wait, the better, unless we miss the train, and then that's too bad. This is a very active, ongoing research area outside of the scope of Bitcoin. Lots of funding, lots of grants, lots of PhD, lots of tenure tracks, lots of prizes. This is happening right now. And to some extent, we can sit and reap this fruit and look at the environment as it moves forward. Yeah, let's have a question.
Yeah, I just had a question. I mean, in light of what you said, that you wait before you know something, and in light of the timeline that for a computer, is it realistic to expect that anything other than the standardized schemes, aka lattice-based stuff and hash-based stuff, that there would be any alternatives to that, practically speaking, Bitcoin?
So I think we'll have a lot of deeper conversations throughout the day, but even when you're like lattice-based, for example, hash-based, these are families of things. So usually, like in all of the examples that I'm aware of, it's not like a whole family was brought down. You're basing, if you're going to classical things, you're saying, okay.
Like it's sites or like I do you think practically speaking, that would be an alternative to consider?
It's maybe. This is a word that I think we should be using more when you're talking about quantum computing and emergent technologies. It could be. It could be that an amazing scheme comes out tomorrow, and then we discover the timeline for quantum computers is not in 5 to 10 years. We discover it's in 20 years. So it has time to mature. We're looking at it, and then when we have to choose, this is the choice that we take. So could it be? Yes. Do I want to bet money on this? I'm not a betting person. So, there's a saying that I really like, which is prophecy is given to the fools. So I'm trying not to prophesize, but we'll just have to read the environment, see what is going on, and make decisions as they come. Sure. Great. So we chose something. We have the signature we need to move. We need to move UTXOs from this unsecure addresses and migrate them to this new and secure. So we'll talk a lot in the upcoming days about how are we going to do this, but just to sort of set the scene, let's talk a bit about numbers, and we'll have a deeper dive about this later. Where the current UTXO set is around a bit short of 200 million UTXOs. That's quite a lot. About 60 million of these UTXOs expose public keys for various reasons. So the 60 will be, I guess, more stress to move. But if we're in a world where CRQCs are a thing, all of these addresses need to move to something secure, and that is a lot. We all know Bitcoin, throughput, limited block space. This is something we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about the Bitcoin threat. We found a solution. Doing the last step of moving towards the solution is time-consuming, and we need a good amount of preparation to do this. So the estimates for migration go from 3 months to 3 years. Of course, like there's no upper bound; it can take forever. But like the 3 month is based on we're stopping everything and we're just moving UTXO. Nobody does anything else. Not very realistic, but maybe if everybody's panicking. And I think a better way maybe to think about it is allowing for some organic migration happening. Say we have a standard, we're thinking it's coming, and then there's a lot of UTXO activity just happening. So there's nothing stopping us from moving it to secure addresses and so on as time passes by. And this will make these estimates even shorter, but this again assumes that these UTXOs have anywhere to migrate to. Cool. So we talked about migration, we talked about timeline, but at the heart of a CRQC, this is a security bug. This means we have built Bitcoin on some assumptions, and now we discover that one of the assumptions doesn't work. Somewhere in our, like we can think about other security bugs. We thought that the computer is going to do X, and now it cannot do this anymore. What do we do? What do we do with these bugs? How do we deal with it? And this is unlike a lot of the previous discussion that is more technological. This is more philosophical. So where's the philosophy guy? But still, what do we do with addresses that do not migrate? And of course, we don't know if they don't want to, they can't, they lost the keys. We know what's happening, but there are coins that did not move, and we see CRQCs hanging out around us. So there are, at the two ends of the spectrum, we have the burn philosophy. There's some deadline. After this block height, anything that could have, any UTXO that could have been created by CRQC is rejected. This means that a lot of coins, or some coins, again, numbers coming up later today, can never burn and can never move, and they're considered burned or frozen, depending what you like. And this is a deep philosophical clash with how we think about Bitcoin. On the one hand, on the other hand, I don't know if Bitcoin was ever to, I don't know. We'll talk about this later. Cool. I do have opinions, surprising. Cool. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the still philosophy that, well, anybody, you get a CRQC, you can break the cryptography, good for you, enjoy your brand new shiny Bitcoins, and yeah, go to town. This means, I think there's no way around it, this will destabilize the ecosystem, even more so if whoever steals this Bitcoins goes like, well, this is not such an amazing system. If everybody can come in and steal this Bitcoin, I'd better go ahead and sell them. But whatever will happen will have a very, very significant effect on the ecosystem, and this is something we should be thinking about. So these are the two ends of the spectrum. Of course, there's a lot in the middle, and I think we'll be talking about this a lot in the upcoming days, months, years, until we'll come up about with a solution or a different discussion topic. But this is, I think, the deeply philosophical question that CRQCs bring. Okay, we talked about the steps, the questions. Let's have a bit of a timeline here, because we talked about timeline for quantum computers. What is the timeline for the Bitcoin reaction for it? We're thinking, when we're thinking about this, about 3 phases. We're thinking about research, we're thinking about implementation, and then migration. And there are, at least in our mind, 2 paths. One is the long-term path, which is pretty much where we are right now. We're thinking that there's like half a decade ahead of us. We have time to think, to consider, to wait for schemes to mature, to do extra research, to test things very carefully. But then there's also the path where we're moving to contingency. We're looking around the corner, we see CRQC waving back at us, and we're like, okay, something needs to happen, we need to move. And of course, we can jump from one to the other based on what we see around us. And all of this is based on things like SegWit, Taproot, how things moved earlier in Bitcoin. So these are our guesses. So for research, like if we're taking our time to deeply think about it, let schemes mature and so on, something like 2.5 years. If we're in a hurry, in 6 months, again, probably less, but this is a good estimate of we need to act soon. When it comes to implementation, testing, again, doing everything very careful, something like 1.5 years. If we're in a hurry, you can do this in 1 year. Honestly, some of the people here in the audience can like slap it together in 3 days, I think. But even if we're in contingency mode, we're stressed, we probably want to be more careful with this, so let's put 1 year on it. And then migration, so 3 years is a reasonable estimate. Some organic, some people are moving just for the sake of security. But then if everybody wants to move at once, let's put 1 year at this. Again, like the shortest estimate I've seen is talking about like 75 days, but that's, a lot of it also depends on the scheme we choose and so on, but these are somewhat realistic numbers. So all in all, if we have the time that we think we have, 7 years is a good number. If we don't, it can be cut down to 2 years and probably even less, but then, you know, it's risky, lots of money in the system and so on. So if we'll need to move from long-term to contingency, we still need to be somewhat careful not to mess everything up. Cool. And one more subject that I think we're not talking about enough. Bitcoin is not an island. It uses a lot of infrastructure. It lives on the internet. It uses things around it. And then we need to know that all of our dependencies, all of the libraries, all of the things that we're using, they have this figured out. So there is a lot of, like, we're not the only ones in the world that are worried about quantum. There is a lot of work going into this. But this is always something to keep in mind, that whatever that we're using outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem is also secure. They're not messing up. They're not using some weird schemes that were broken and so on. So the internet, there's some peer-to-peer level attacks. It's very fashionable in academy, various variations on Eclipse attack, BGP attacks, and so on. A lot of it has some cryptographic assumptions at the bottom of it, of somebody signs something, somebody says something on the path, and so on. We want to be always aware of these kinds of things. And of course, there's other outside, like for example, a new core version comes out, it comes out with a signature. What is the signature? What is a signature scheme? Where does it come from? And I bet there's a lot of other things in the ecosystem around us that once we face a worldwide security bug, we want to make sure that any connection that we do, we remember that this thing is in the background and we should be watching out. Cool. So we talk about the Bitcoin threat model, we talked about mining and signatures. We touch on the burn versus steal philosophical dilemma, and we'll touch about this some more. And we talked some about the timeline to solution. And you're more than welcome to read the full report here. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to all of the discussions that are going to come up.
Let's give it up for Clara.